All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to be your host today for the Space Talk. This is a series of interview chats that we have with our teachers and teachers that want to share their experiences in hopes of helping fellow educators like yourself in the mission of supporting student learning. Joining us today, we have Erin Byrne, our Customer Success Manager at Mathspace, and Jenny Missen from Radford College in the ACT. She's going to be our guest speaker for today. Now, while we wait for everyone else to join us, please say hi in the chat. Let us know which school you're from, which year levels you are teaching. We would love to hear from you. And we're going to be talking about how to empower students and engage them in maths via continuous formative assessments. Our guest speaker today is Jenny Missen from Radford College, and will be chatting with us in a few minutes. But before I introduce her, I just wanted to address this question first, which is, why are we talking about student engagement and why is it so important? Now, in 2019, the Australian Institute of Teaching and School Leadership reported that around 1 in 5 Australian students don't find school engaging. That's a big percentage there. And the Australian Journal of Teacher Education has also published a study that showed that students start year 7 with a 70% engagement rate, but by the time they reach year 9, that engagement drops to just 55%. So it is a concerning number that we see there in these studies. And we often wonder why students, tend to lower engagement at school. Now, of course, there are many reasons. They can be non-school related, home issues, personal relationships, trauma, you name it. And of course, it's really difficult for us to control any of those reasons. There are also school-related reasons for why students are not motivated. Now, as we look at this, I think it's important for us to focus on what we can change and what we can do to help these students. So what does help students engage in school? This is something that we're going to be talking about today. But research shows that actually there are 4 main reasons and main, I would say, pillars that help with student engagement. One is relevance. When students are working on tasks that they find valuable in their lives, either now or in the future. Having the autonomy to a certain degree in order to choose what they want to do. Competence, feeling capable and feeling like they are growing and succeeding. And relatedness, to feel that you are part of a group and you're not being left out and you are cared for by the people that you respect. So these 4 pillars, I think it really incorporates in what we do here at Mathspace, but also what Jenny is going to be talking about today. So I thought I would bring this up for us to have this in the back of our minds as we move forward in today's webinar. So welcome, Jenny. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before I go on and start asking you questions, I thought I would give you a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, tell us about yourself for everyone on the call today.
Of course. So as Nisa said, I'm the head of maths at Radford College at the moment. I've first started teaching maths way back in 1984 in the Royal Australian Navy, teaching apprentices and sailors. And then I've had a fairly eclectic career working in the computer industry and running my own business as a project manager and as a writer and editor. So I've done a lot of different things. And I returned to teaching back in 2003, and I've been really passionate about finding innovative and effective ways of teaching maths in STEM.
That's amazing. It's great to see a very diverse background you have there. I'm sure it adds up to what you do as a teacher, and I'm sure the students will also appreciate a different perspective there. Now let's dive into our interview chat. So you have been using waypoints since the beginning, since we launched it last year. We were just testing it out. You helped us with a lot of feedback, which is really great. And I guess everyone would like to understand a bit more why you decided to implement waypoints in your school.
Well, since, as I mentioned, I came back to maths teaching in 2003, and I have been searching for a really effective way of identifying gaps in students' learning. We know that as high school teachers in particular, we have a diverse range of students coming to our schools and with different backgrounds in maths, and it's really been hard to find exactly what the gaps are. I mean, we get some idea from NAPLAN, we get some idea from other types of testing, PAT testing or Orwell testing, but it's never directly linked to the curriculum, and also there isn't a really good way of helping the students take that information and find ways to work on their own. We've found that waypoints is just a really good way of, first of all, having the teachers know what the students' gaps are, but also helping the students to pick up on those gaps and then try to fill them themselves.
That's amazing. Yes, I think that's what we had in mind when we started developing waypoints, and hearing that you found it useful that way is really inspiring to us. Now, this is something that whenever teachers want to try a different approach or try a different tool, it is always challenging to implement something new. And it would be nice to hear from you if you have encountered any challenges and how that played out as you implemented waypoints at your school.
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to wave my hand because the lights have gone off in my room. There we go.
Oh, there you go.
They're on a timer and they just go off if I'm still too still. Clearly, I'm not moving enough. So the challenges have been convincing teachers that it's worth the time investment in their classroom to have the students complete the initial set of tests in waypoints. That can take a little bit of time. And if they don't have time in class, maybe setting it for homework, but then that follow-up to make sure all the students have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'll come to the last point in a minute, but the way that we've overcome that particular point is just by starting to talk about how particular students have identified a gap, filled that gap, and then being more successful in their learning in class.
Mm-hmm.
We have found that some students think that doing the check-ins is actually a way of learning, and so they just do lots and lots of check-ins. But as Noosa will explain later, they actually have to go and do some learning before they come back and do another check-in. But I think that's in a way that's exciting, because it means that the students are keen to actually get in there and do the work and fill their gaps. Yeah.
That's right. Yes, I was going to mention that if they are at that point where they are not scared of the check-ins and they're not feeling like it's a test, it's already positive.
Yes.
I can see why they would think that they're learning as they're doing check-ins, because whenever they do show understanding for something new, we tell them that they have learned a new skill or showed understanding for a new skill. So they could be thinking that, oh yes, I'll do tons of check-ins and then I will learn, which is, great that they're persevering and they're doing that. Definitely the learning that happens in between each check-in is what they will see coming forward.
Yeah, just another point that I thought I'd mention there is that one of the other things that it took us a while to train the students to not seek help from each other, from the teacher when they're doing the check-ins, because we want that to be a really sort of good baseline of their understanding, not the person next to them or the teacher. So it's taken us a little while to train the students to do that, but now they understand that this is just information for us to use for themselves and for us. They're happy enough to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it is, something that we have to be mindful, because waypoints, the way that we designed it is not so much as, hey, this is a test. And whenever we think about a test, the thinking of cheating, and are you going to be talking to someone, going to be researching the questions? With waypoints, we try to think about it in a way that that's not a problem if they ask for help for 1 or 2 times, because the system will adapt to what the students can perform, and eventually if they guessed a question that wasn't at their level, it will get harder, and then they will have to skip a question and then go back to the right level. But it is amazing to see that what you're mentioning is that has happened, and it's a common scenario, I would say. The next thing we wanted to talk about is that thing about thinking of waypoints or thinking of activities in maths in general as a test. Like everything is going to be testing how smart you are or how good at maths you are. So we would be really interested in learning about how you positioned waypoints so that students wouldn't see it as a test.
Yeah, I think in my class in particular, and I think most of my teachers would agree, we want students to understand that everybody comes with gaps in their knowledge somewhere along the way. And we have a fundamental belief here at Radford that every student can do maths. And one of the things that can stand in the way of them being successful is that they have gaps, and so sometimes those gaps prevent them from moving on in a particular area. And so I've been training my students to identify those gaps through waypoints, and that this is just a tool for them to find that. I think also before waypoints, I would always pre-test my students at the beginning of a topic, so they were kind of used to that idea of a pre-test, and the fact that there's a likelihood of them not being able to answer questions on the pre-test because we're about to learn it. So they were kind of already primed for that. But yeah, I just think that idea of it's an identification tool that then they can use to be more successful is the way that we pitched it.
That's really interesting and really important as well, because when students are learning something or when they're going to learn a new tool and start using it, if they see it as a test, anxiety will kick in and you're not going to get a true measurement of what they actually know. We were really mindful with that as well as we labeled things in the platform, so that a check-in is a check-in, it's not a test. Because as soon as you put a word test on it, students will feel anxious about it and feel conscious if they are not able to answer everything quickly and correctly. The other thing that we wanted to talk about is something that you mentioned probably the beginning of the year when we were talking about how waypoints was going, that students are starting to fill their gaps in learning and you're teaching them how to do that. So we would be interested in learning how that happened.
Yes. So when waypoints was originally created, as you can see on the screen there, it tells the students where their gaps are. So a grey box is a gap, a complete gap in their knowledge, something that they haven't been able to do. And so we would take the students to their report and help them to identify those grey boxes, and then pick up on the code that's at the end of that grey box and cut and paste that back into Mathspace in the textbook area. And then that would give them textbook information questions, and then they could do an adaptive task to check their understanding. And so Miss will explain that now there's a link straight back to Mathspace, which I found out today and I'm very excited about. So they've been, picking up those codes and taking them back to Mathspace and actually working through those. Shall I tell about my 2 exciting students?
Yes, let's talk about them.
Okay, so one of my girls in Year 8 whom I taught last year, and she started doing the waypoints with me last year, she now has, of her own accord, filled in every single gap from Year 3 to what we're doing in Year 8 at the moment. And so she's yeah, she's got no gaps, which is just absolutely amazing. And I've got, sorry, the light's gone off again. I've got some of my Year 10 students doing the same thing. They're a high achieving class who are really keen to go on and do the higher levels of maths. So they've been going through and filling their gaps as well. I've got one student in Year 10 who, from somebody else's class, who has identified her gaps. She's sort of not ready for the methods, which is sort of like the 2-unit in New South Wales. And so she's been working on filling her gaps so that she can actually work up towards doing that higher level of math. So while we don't have all of the students at that point yet, there are certainly some students who are starting to do that, and that word spreads, as you know, in a school
100%.
community.
That's amazing. You would imagine that a student that has gaps and is not ready for the extension level of maths, they would probably feel discouraged and feel like, okay, that's just not for me. But having the possibility of identifying exactly what they need to go back and study or revise, practice a little bit more. Sometimes it's just a matter of watching a video on a lesson and then being able to see, oh, okay, yeah, so that's how I do this. Yeah. And then be able to extend and prepare for that extra level of maths. That's right. It is inspiring to see that happening. And, a student, it's one student, but that one student will be an inspiration for everyone around them to really persevere and feel like they can excel in maths. Yes. That's really exciting for me. I think I shared it last time we had the space talk, that I used to struggle with maths as a high school student, I guess middle school student in Year 5, where fractions was just, my fear for everything. And it wasn't until I discovered, encountered a teacher that was able to say, hey, you just need to practice this and then you will be good. And then I got a 100% on a test, and I came back to my teacher saying, by the way, I think you graded this incorrectly because there's no way I could get 100%. It was a funny story, really nice. I ended up going to university to study maths because of that moment, because it shifted my mindset to think about, it is possible. I struggle. Yes, that's fine. You don't have to learn everything on the first time that you try. You can persevere and you can find other ways to learn, and that helps you succeed. And that was a shift in my mindset that I think is probably happening with a lot of students that are now seeing the possibility of identifying a gap and then being able to go on and practice. So thank you for sharing that story. I was going to mention in the slides before, with that little copy and pasting of the code, it's amazing, working with technology. It's amazing how much we can iterate and update and evolve. And now, students can just click on that Mathspace icon and they will then be taken straight onto the textbook with the right lesson, the videos, and, you name it, so they can practice their skills. So yeah, I think there'll be a nice surprise for them when they do it next time.
My students will be very excited to see that when I show them tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really, really inspiring to hear that story. I think, as students change their mindset and change their behavior, it will probably influence in how you do things moving forward. So I guess that would be my next question. What is your plan and your goals for waypoints moving forward?
Yes, so we have already seen, well, certainly in my classes, I've seen this shift in behaviour where the students are taking responsibility for their learning. We have quite a high focus. One of our foci for this year is self-regulated learning in the whole school, and so we are really encouraging students to take responsibility for their learning, and this is one way where they can do that. It also allows us, I think, to be a bit more creative in the way that we teach maths, because we can use more inquiry-based approaches that give more interest to the students. But then we have Mathspace and waypoints to do the practice and the drill that's associated with that. So moving forward, we are looking to do more project-based work, but also to make waypoints and Mathspace a part of the sort of the vernacular almost of the way that we do maths here.
That's amazing. That's really exciting. I do think that, you know, whenever you have choice, when you mentioned that students in your classroom have a choice, I think we didn't talk about this yet, but you mentioned that you usually have an activity that they can either do practice or
Yes.
they can do filling in the gaps, and then seeing them choose filling the gaps was, I think that's what you mentioned.
Yeah, so on Friday, I have a Year 8 period 6 last lesson on Friday afternoons, and I often make it Choices Friday. So I'll give them a choice of whether they want to hone some skills in a particular topic, or whether they want to gap fill, or use Mathspace in another way, whether they want to use textbook. And quite a number of the students now are choosing to do that gap filling work last thing on a Friday. I think that's pretty incredible.
Yes. And it's exciting to see that, you know, being able to measure student understanding in a continuous way might free up your time to then embark on those activities that are project-based and inquiry-based, like you mentioned. So that's I'm really excited about that, and I will definitely be wanting to know more when that happens.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you know, thank you again, Jenny, for joining us today.
A pleasure.
I thought I would open a couple of minutes for anyone on the call if they have any questions about anything that we have mentioned. I will be showing you guys how waypoints work in a second, and then we can see what questions we have for Jenny right now. Feel free to use the Q&A, everyone on the call, to ask any questions. We would love to hear from you. And, you know, I think everyone here on the call is definitely inspired by your experience and everything that you have mentioned so far. Certainly I am, and I hope that more and more students get to experience that feeling of taking all the gaps and being able to say, I have conquered it.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I know typing is usually takes some time for us to get the questions in. I thought what I might do, let me just see. Okay, I'm just gonna have this screen ready to go. And feel free to enter your questions, everyone. I think Jenny is going to stay on the call for a few more minutes. It's still 10 to 4. And if you enter any questions, we'll be able to flag it. I can pause it, and then we come back to Q&A as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through waypoints and how it works on the student and teacher side as well. And we'll be able to also show you how you can get access to the platform if you don't have access yet. So just changing my screen here. Let me just see if I can do that. There we go. Let me just confirm that you guys can see, or perhaps Jenny can confirm if you can see the waypoints. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Just making sure. So what you guys are seeing here is the teacher side, and I actually want to show you the student side first, because I think it really paints the picture of how it works. So when students first log into waypoints and it's their first time ever, they will be asked which year they're in at school. And that helps the software identify exactly which questions we need to be asking in order to identify their gaps in understanding. So let's say that the student chooses a year 7. We'll be asking questions from year 7 to start off. But if the students start to struggle, need to skip questions, or if they need to, or if they make a mistake on a few questions, we then start asking questions from the years below. So we do have a way, without having to test them on every single strand, on every single topic from every single year level below their grade level, we still have a way to identify if there are gaps there. Now, the same thing happens if the student is in year 7, but then they are extended and they probably know and have some skills from years 8 and 9. We also move forward as we identify that they know those skills. Now, once I click continue, I have an option to do a check-in. Let me just go through here. And the first few check-ins are going to be 10 questions every time, because it's that diagnostic phase where forming the baseline of their understanding. But after they complete the diagnostic phase, the students will enter the growth phase, and the check-ins are shorter. So it's a bit faster for them to continue to use the platform and still track their understanding. Now, the questions have been designed to be diagnostic, so it will be easy if they have those skills and difficult if they don't. So as you can see, this is an example of a question here. If I just increase the size a bit, if I know how to answer the question, perfect, I can just input the answer there. If I don't, I can simply skip the question. And we actually let the students know that it's okay to skip questions, because we don't want them guessing anything. We want them to actually only answer what they know, so that we have a true measurement of their understanding. For the sake of time, I'm going to just skip through here, and then I can show you guys what happens at the end. So check-in is complete. Because I skipped all the questions, I probably don't have any skills that I have demonstrated. That's right, I don't. But it doesn't say anything. It just says, nice work, let's continue. Frida is my student nickname. And then they can go on and they can do another check-in another time. But what happens once they completed the diagnostic phase is that we make a skills report available for the students. And that's, I think, where the beauty of Waypoints is in. So this skills report allows the students to identify and to really know what they know and what they need to practice. We are redesigning this page so that we don't focus as much on year levels and more on skills and growing and a Mathspace or a mathematical journey that they will go through. But at the same time, looking at this, it is a paradigm shift in letting your students know what they need to know and be able to practice so that they can progress and focus on growth as well. Because as I look at this, I can see, okay, I have demonstrated all skills for year 3, most of the skills for year 4, and I do have some gaps there, but I also have skills in year 7. So it is completely normal to have gaps in previous years. We're not going to know everything all the time unless we practice it all the time. So it's okay to have those gaps, and it's something that we also ask teachers to communicate with the students. Now, talking about the beauty of this report is that even after we redesign it, it will still allow students to come in, see which skills they need to practice. So if I go to show all skills, I will be able to see that I have a gap here in year 4. This gap is almost closed because it's, at that green circle, so almost a green tick. This one is still at the beginning, so I need to learn more in order to show understanding for this. So in order to learn and practice, we have this link here. So we can just click, and it takes me to the Mathspace textbook from the student's side. You notice that that code is already copied there. I have purchases and change. That's the topic relating to that particular skill. So from here, the student has choice to either practice one question at a time, look at how a question might be solved. That sometimes is enough for them to remember how to solve questions in this form. They can start an adaptive task if they're feeling like they should work a little bit longer, a bit more. And these are all the questions they will see on that adaptive task. So it will start with the easy ones and then increase difficulty as they get the right answers. For the lesson page, which I think is where they should start, there is this "Are you ready?" section with a question that's relating to the topic. They can see the solution for that example or try a similar one as well. And then there is this learn section with a video that actually explains the concept that they are looking at. And then there is the apply section with a problem that's more relating to this actual topic. This is something I really like, the remember section, because we know it's easy to forget those little things, those rules, or sometimes, conversions. So it's always going to be here for things that we find students usually forget. Now, this particular topic has only one concept within it. So there is one video, but if a topic has more than one concept, they will see more videos as well. And just by doing this, looking at the lessons, reading the concepts, but also looking at the videos, it tracks their time on the platform. So teachers can see when students are logged in and then doing work independently, and when they do that. And when they do this, let's say they start an adaptive task, it will show the report for the teachers. So teachers can go back and see, Frida, in this case, started a task on purchases and change. Let's see how she did. And if she was struggling, it will show. If she did well, it will show. And all the history will be there. So that's really powerful for the students to be able to practice independently, but also for the teachers to then provide that support if they are struggling still. Now, when I go back to waypoints here, go just like this. For students that already have a Mathspace account, all they need to do to access waypoints, it's quite simple. They just log into Mathspace and they click on this little 4 squares app switcher, and waypoints will show up for them, and they can start doing check-ins and learning about what they already know and areas that they need to improve. So when I click here, it takes me to waypoints. And same thing happens if I am on waypoints and then I want to go back to Mathspace, I can always use that to switch back and forth. Another thing now, if you don't have access and you want your students to start using waypoints right away, you can get access to it by going to, I think it's mathspace.co/waypoints, if I'm not mistaken. There we go. And then you will have an option. I'm logged in. I need to use a different screen. So let's say mathspace.co/waypoints. And I will send you an email with this link so you guys don't have to remember it. Basically, once you are on the platform, you can either log in if you have a Mathspace account, or you can, let's see. It's asking me to log in because I have this saved. I will just go to the Mathspace website, which is another way as well to get that free access for your students right here. So this banner here lets you click on the learn more, and it will take you to the landing page where if you are a teacher, you can start a free trial, and then you can monitor your students' progress as they do waypoints. If you are, if your student wants to create a free account for them, because we are making waypoints free for all students, so that even if the school is not using, they can still independently track their learning. It's part of our mission to be the right help for every student so that they can excel in maths. For teachers, if they want to track and see the data, we do have a free trial, and the school can, of course, look into a subscription if they want to. Now, this is where the students get the free access. So they can click here, and it will ask if, for them to sign up, basically. They can go through the process of choosing I'm a student. If you are a teacher, then you choose you are a teacher, put the date in, and then create an account. You can create an account as a teacher and then share your class code for the students to join. You can invite your students as well. So as you go through this process, you can easily invite students. I'll show you from my account. So that's a bit easy. I'm already logged in. So if I go to my teacher account, right at the top here, I can invite students or teachers. If I want other teachers at my school to also use the tool, I can do that right here. Now, since we switched back to the teacher side, I thought I would run you through what kinds of reports you get with waypoints. So just from the overview here, you can already see that for my class, I'm getting a report that tells me the estimated grade level that my students are at. You can see that there's a 4.7 here for Frida. It means that she has demonstrated proficiency for most skills in year 4, as we can see the green tick there, and some skills in year 5 as well. And we saw when we were looking at the student side that there were also some skills in other year levels, but not enough to demonstrate full proficiency. So that's why she's at a 4.7 grade level. Now, if you want to see more details on this, let's say this is my year 7 class. Of course, they're not going to know everything. We haven't learned everything from year 7, so there are gaps there. But if I click on that year level, I can use the skills that they already know. For students that have already mastered those skills, they can do extension work, they can do enrichment tasks, and then we can group students on what they should be doing together. They can, work based on skills if you want to. As you can see, all of these dots represent a different skill. I'm looking at all strengths, but I can filter to see, let's say, just number and algebra. And then I can see, okay, so for multiply and divide fractions, I can see that 3 of my students already ticked that off. So if I'm going to focus on this for the whole class, I might give them a different activity. And of course, if I want to see, but why do they have gaps, these other 3 students, why do they have gaps on multiply and divide fractions? I can go back, let's say, to year 6 to see if the gap started there or if it was in year 5. And then I can see that the gaps start to fill in a bit more. So I can identify at which level I need to do some revision with them more. We know that students have the ability to go on, click and do the practice independently, but we know that not all students will do that, especially if they're not feeling as engaged yet. So we do allow you to then see that data and then create activities for them, which might encourage them a bit more. From here as well, if you click on a particular student, you can then see a list of all skills that they have already ticked off. This is quite helpful when you're talking to parents as well, because the language that we use here is quite approachable. So I can statements, so it makes it easy to understand, and you can easily show this, okay, so they need to focus on this particular topic or this particular skill. This report is also going to get a revamp quite soon, so it is more visual and you don't have to click on a big list as it is now. But for now, you still have access to this, and it's quite helpful. There we go. Now, if we go then thinking about, I mentioned that students do check-ins at the beginning so that we have that diagnostic phase and we know their baseline. But if they continue to do check-ins later on, those growth check-ins will actually track how much they're growing. So if we then go to this growth phase, growth page, and we look at, let's say, less 90 days, it's about a term of work. And if we look at, let's say, number and algebra, or just all strengths, let's say all strengths. So all of my demo students here, Frida is growing. Hey, I'm happy. She's growing. She's actually grown a lot, which is usually not expected, if you have a student that's really struggling. But be mindful that I just skipped through all my check-ins and then I started doing actual check-ins and thinking about the answers. So that's why I grew a lot. But this is, more of what you see, a small percentage of growth for students that are struggling. But this also helps with students that perhaps they're going backwards, perhaps there is something going on and they need some extra attention. Growth will also go backwards. So what they demonstrate on waypoints is always up to date if they're doing the check-ins every week. We recommend at least once a week to keep that continuous data going. And if they demonstrated something previously, they did well in a particular skill previously, but then they forget or they start to make mistakes or they guessed something they didn't actually knew that skill, then it shows negative growth for the teacher side. So you can definitely track what's going on there. This graph here will highlight students that are growing, in terms of their growth, but also in terms of their grade level. So if they're moving to this quadrant here, that's where we want to see everyone growing. As time goes by, they're growing in their grade level there. All right. There are some other things that you can do with waypoints. You can check, if you want to keep track of how many check-ins every student is doing, whether they have logged in every week or not. You have this under the activity. But I think the meat of the conversation here goes on this page and then on the curriculum page once you click on a year level, which is where you will see most of the data coming through for what the students are doing, and it helps with planning for when you're teaching as well. I might open for questions again if anyone has any questions they want to ask me or Jenny or Erin. We're happy to answer your questions there. I'm going to switch back now to my...
I'm just going to interrupt, Jenny. I've got one question for you just based on Sarah's question in the chat.
Sure.
She asked about how to stop students skipping through the questions, and I said there isn't a way, but I wonder if you had any strategies that you had.
Yeah, look, I found that most students are keen to show what they know. So I've got one boy who started skipping them originally, and then I said, oh, look, just, to have a go at this question if you have any idea. I think you might find that they would do that at the beginning, but then they've got the growth phase that will pick up on that anyway. And once they start to see that it's giving them a picture of where their gaps are, they're actually quite keen to find the gaps and start filling them themselves. So it might be an initial problem with one or two students, but I haven't found that it's a problem overall. And we've got probably, we must be getting close to 1,000 students using waypoints now. So yeah, that's quite a lot.
Yeah, that's amazing. And well, thinking about teachers that we talked to, that's a similar experience that you described, Jenny. If they don't really know what they're getting out of it yet, and it's the beginning, they might feel like they just want to skip. So it's done, they complete the check-ins faster as well, or they just don't feel as confident. But as time goes by, they see that everyone else is getting something out of it, and they are being able to see what their true knowledge is, and they don't want to practice things that they already know. So they're not going to, be skipping everything and then be able to only practice the easy things. They want to be challenged because they feel like they can do more. So I think that's the experience we've had with most schools as well.
Yes.
Jenny, can you just confirm that you can still see? Yeah, okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so I'm gonna play this. Thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been great having you here. Thank you, Jenny, for being our guest speaker. If anyone has any questions, of course, you can also just email us. Thank you, Jenny. You were going to say something, sorry.
Just my pleasure. It's been lovely to join you.
Thank you, that's amazing. Okay, I'm gonna play this video and I hope you guys enjoy it. I will share the link as well if you want to see it again, or share with your friends as well. I think it's quite a nice one.
We often talk about what it means to move from compliance to engagement. It's the idea of creating an environment where students want to learn rather than have to learn. But if we want students to be creative, self-directed learners, we need to move beyond student engagement and into empowerment. But this requires some paradigm shifts. That's right, we are going to be talking shift. Here's what I mean. The empowered classroom is a shift from giving choices to inspiring possibilities. It's a shift from making the subject interesting into tapping into the student interest. When you go from saying you must learn this to asking, what do you want to learn? It's a shift from taking assessments to assessing your own learning. an iterative process full of mistakes that ultimately lead to success. It's a shift from the teacher asking all the questions to the students asking their own questions, where they chase the inquiry process and take learning off-road. It's a shift from uncritical consuming to critical consuming and creating. Here, students move from critical consuming to inspiration to creativity, where they use the design process to launch their work to the world. It's a shift from differentiating instruction to personalizing learning. And it's a shift from rigid to adjustable systems so that students own the process. They can set their own pace, choose their own formats, and decide what resources they want to use to accomplish their goals. It's a shift in mindset from compliance to self-direction. In other words, it's a shift towards student ownership. And when that happens, our students become the creative critical thinkers who change the world.
That was it, everyone. I really liked that video, so I wanted to share with you, and it's a quick one as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will be leaving you now and sharing the recording as well as some of the resources. And yeah, awesome. Thank you for supporting student learning.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.